Hello, hello, hello. A very good morning to one and all. This next talk is going to be as interesting, I promise, as breakfast food in the morning, waking you right up. We are going to be talking about working with blockchain, an abstract data structure with the potential to change how we live. Moderating the talk is the fantastic Funny Arega. Mr. Funny has been an executive management professional with 27 years of techno-functional and managerial experience in software industry across Silicon Valley and India. He's a subject matter expert in blockchain data science database. He has been a technical editor for books, authors, speakers, bloggers, teachers in these areas. He has filed 2 patents. He's currently the vice president data science at High Radius Technologies. He was the senior VP heading engineering at Zebi Data. Apart from that, Mr. Funny has built private blockchain platform in 2017 and a public blockchain platform that went live in 2019. He also built one of the world's first live land registry implementation on blockchain. He has worked with companies like Oracle, Quest Software, and TCS in the past. He graduated with a BTech from IIT Madras in 1994. Handing it over to you, Funny sir. Please welcome him on stage. You are on mute, Funny sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Tapesh, for the introduction. I thank the organizers for giving us this opportunity to share our thoughts on this interesting topic. May I now request Santosh, one of our esteemed panelists, to introduce himself.
Hi, morning, Funny. Thank you, and thank you, Tapesh, and thank you, Pivot, for giving me this opportunity. I am Santosh Mishra. I'm at present working as Transport Commissioner, Government of Tamil Nadu. Prior to this assignment, I was Commissioner of E-Governance and CEO of Tamil Nadu E-Governance Agency, and I was responsible for the technology initiatives of Tamil Nadu, and we brought out this massive thrust on blockchain and AI implementation in public service delivery, and statewide blockchain backbone, which is called Nambika NAM, which was conceived during my tenure there, and it's in the process of getting implemented, built, and rolled out. And I graduated from IIT Kanpur in 1993, then did my master's from University of Minnesota in 1995. I was working with the Bell Labs for about 3 years before quitting and coming back and joining the civil services. So that's a brief about me. Look forward to having the discussion.
Thank you, Santosh, for the crisp introduction. And just to add, Santosh is one of the shining examples of technology savvy civil service officers in India. It's a very nice thing about him. May I now request Prasanna to introduce himself?
Yeah, hi, good morning, everybody. Great to see Mr. Santosh out here on this panel along with Abhinav and you. So I work in a bank, TCB Bank, as a innovation head, and as well as I take care of a digital delivery of all the digital initiatives in the bank. I act as enterprise architect for a bank, taking care of 150 plus applications and the overall architecture baseline. So on a blockchain side, I'm practicing blockchain since 2016 with the Innovation Karmiya program, working with more than 40 plus startups and mentoring them. This is in a nutshell, and looking forward for how we can really see the various trends in blockchain and how we can furthermore grow together. Yeah.
Thanks, Prasanna. And to add to that, Prasanna, BFSI banking and financial sector is a key sector for blockchain, and Prasanna happens to be there at the right time at the right place to spearhead in innovation there. May I now request Abhinav to introduce himself?
Sure. Thank you so much. Thanks the Pan IIT team. Thanks to Pivot. very glad to be part of this esteemed panel. My name is Abhinav. I run a company called Chainflux, where I used to work at Ernst & Young, post which we started Chainflux. We're a startup based out of Bangalore and Hyderabad. We are funded by Chirati Ventures, and we work on blockchain solutions across enterprises. We are currently working closely on a kind of India-wide solution for the gold industry in India, how we can implement blockchain within the gold industry, looking at supply chains there, as well as looking at how we can introduce aspects of ESG compliance and sustainability compliance using blockchain. So we love experimenting with different use cases around blockchain, and we're a passionate team of developers. I'm very happy to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Abhinav. To add to that, Abhinav and his company are a great example of the startup revolution in India, spearheading some of the work in some cutting-edge technologies. Okay. So regarding the topics we are going to focus on, the topic we have for this session, working with blockchain, is fairly open and also very large. And there are also specific topics lined up in subsequent panel discussions. There is one on innovation in cryptocurrency. There is one on identity access and transactions, and one on cybersecurity. So I guess we would be skipping these areas in this discussion, since they're going to be adequately covered in the subsequent areas. And a request to the audience, you can post questions you have in the chat, and you can post them anytime, and we would take up the questions in the last 10 minutes. Okay. So as everyone knows, blockchain has been a big buzzword invented in 2008. The concept, the white paper was published in 2008, and the first live implementation, the first Bitcoin, was minted in 2009. And since then, it has been creating waves. So it is said to be likely to be causing as much disruption to the trust and the transaction area as internet has caused it to communication. So so blockchain has inherent benefits of promoting trust and collaboration and joint ownership that opens up a lot of use cases for using blockchain. So now in this esteemed panel, we have expertise of people from the banking sector, from the government, and from supply chain. So we would be focusing on the use cases in these areas. So may I request Prasanna to give a 2-3 minute summary about the different use cases in the banking and financial sector for the blockchain.
Yeah, Fanny, thank you so much for this opening question to me. So when I look at the overall banking, the way it is happening since last 50-60 years and since last 5 years, it's a drastic change, right? What we have seen, the way customer is a change, behavior has changed, right? Since last 18 months, or since demonetization has happened, or since a lot of digital initiatives happen in India, so-called UPI or adoption of Aadhaar. Or since then, I think we are looking at how we can consolidate many ecosystems. Say, example, we have seen the rise of account aggregator, or we are seeing how GM marketplace being launched by the government of India, how it can be utilized by banks, right? So when we look at the banks and the rise of a bank since so many years together, so the most of the impact on the banking is because of technology. We have seen the branch infrastructure was the only channel, right, way back in 90s or late 2000, and since rise of internet banking and mobile banking, and with better data facilities available in India and outside of India, most of the customer behavior is as far as the customer service is concerned, it is very much automated. But when you look at overall banking, right, since then till now, the backend architectures which are existing in the it will take a lot of time, and the banks don't have really time, because it's a collaboration effort, right? It's not like one bank will change their complete architecture as of the way banking happens or payment happens, right? In a payment, say example, I am doing a transaction from a particular channel. It reaches out to my bank, followed by it will reaches out to the acquiring bank, followed by the trusted agency, so-called schemes or Mastercard, Visa, NPCI. Then this transaction reaches out to my bank at beneficiary, or if I'm doing some fund transfer, it will be reached out to my beneficiary's account. And after that, there will be additional layers like reconciliation, settlement. If a transaction goes through, fine. Otherwise, it will be a dispute management or talking to the contact center. That's how is the whole banking which you have seen. So in a nutshell, we are sitting on some of the challenges, like how can we have a better KYC experience or a customer onboarding experience, or we are sitting at a challenge, how can we really improvise this settlement reconciliation, and there are many more other 300 plus operations, right? How can we really automate that? There are other use cases like cross-border payment or trade finance or AML KYC. How do we really take care of frauds, right? So when we look at in 2021 as an industry, we always look at how can we move from a collaboration era to autonomous era. So autonomous era is like everything should happen seamlessly for customers or even for internal employees. So that moment we look at what is that radical change agent will come in our life. So we look at emerging techs like AI or big data, followed by blockchain or IoT or cloud, API banking or open banking. So use cases when I talk about banking or on a blockchain. So what is going to happen? Blockchain is a foundational technology. It is something not, it will come and say, I will change your payment experience, or I will change your some audit experience or some trade finance experience. It will come and eventually it will amalgam the way databases and network has done the magic, right? The way you said internet or a TCP/IP protocol or the databases RDBMS. Similarly, blockchain will bring on smartness to your banking. It will reduce a lot of intermediaries the way we have in a cross-border payment or trade finances or AML KYC. One use case which I talk about, which we are doing with IDRBT along with the MITI, is that how can we have a better onboarding experience with a video KYC based blockchain? Customer comes and do a KYC with the bank A, same KYC against one unique ID can be utilized with a bank B or any of the other bank, the way we have a governance structure. You talk about account aggregator, which we are seeing, right? So we are talking with Revit that how can we bring a better security among all the stakeholders, FIUs, FIPs, and account aggregator in between. Or you talk about sandboxes, right? Which FI is looking at how can we build. So I think every application or every process in a banking will undergo change with more smartness with the AI in combination with the blockchain. At a DCB bank, there is or at a banking, we have a regulator, right? How do we open ATM? So that whole process has to be automated. So we built that experience to have the locker, which we put it on the ATM, right? The whole password generation, utilization, expiry, the whole process we have built it on a blockchain. The audit process, which we do eventually, which is a manual process, and it takes days, months to do audit of every branch. The whole process, the complete process, we have put it on blockchain so that all the evidences and the audit proofs are securely kept in an audit layer. So when you look at the whole type of use cases where more than 2-3 stakeholders are involved, where we need a lot of transparency, where we have to remove intermediaries, all those types of use case will fall into as far as the banking is a concern. So I can name 30-40 use cases which can be utilized, but I'll name some of them which India should really look at. Say example, reconciliation settlement, the way NPC have done on Vajra to reduce the settlement cycle. But if you really come as a together, all the third-party service providers like Worldlines or FSS, FIS, they can really bring a sophisticated architecture to reduce complete settlement reconciliation, and it will save lakhs or crores rupees for a banking ecosystem. Another use case I can say that when a ATM service provider put a cash in the ATM, so he was being assigned some process, and the whole process is a disconnected experience. At the end of the day, he comes back and says that on these 10 ATMs, I have put this money. And if he fills some gap, he will fill up this gap in the Excel sheet. But at the end of a financial year, there will be a deficit or a gap of crores of rupees for a biggest bank, right? So the whole process can have a end-to-end self-sovereign experience wherein whenever money is put, so that authentication comes to ATM and relevant core banking, this much money is being kept at ATM, and that whole without reconciliation we can say this much money is being put. Central fraud registry which RBI manages, right, which is another disconnected experience. So fraud happens in the last month, will get visible to all the other banks to the central fraud registry after 40-45 days, right? This whole disconnected process can come online as soon as fraud happens or being reported to RBI. The whole data can be immediately available to all the banks so that they write on their AML, KYC relevant algorithms real time. CBIL, I think likewise now we can really see wherever more than stakeholders are involved, where we want to reduce a lot of cost and we want to do a lot of changes, right? So I think the way recently 15 plus banks came in together and said that they are working on a blockchain company where one of the primary agenda will be like how can we improvise trade finance, LCBG kind of use cases. So there will be a lot of use cases at a bank level. I can do many use cases. We have done 4 to 5 use cases. We are leveraging on those incentives. But I think intra-bank or with an intra-regulator use cases will really bring much more needed advantage of blockchain the way telecoms have done, right? For SMS sanity, it is being implemented and it's live, right? And there are a lot of perks around that to reduce a lot of fraud. Similarly, centralized KYC or smart KYC on blockchain or a trade finance, cross-border payment with the central bank digital currency, the 180 plus central governments or central banks are doing the POC pilots, including India also. So there are peripheral use cases which individual bank can do, but larger use cases wherein RBI regulators has to come together and build so that over a period of next 5-6 years, the way DeFis are working, right, for providing better financial inclusion. So certainly as a banker or as a regulator, we can provide those much more needed services for a better financial inclusion, right? Technology is good. We have seen how Bitcoin really changed the way we do peer-to-peer payment. But with the legal aspects, with the better legal regulatory aspects, I can certainly say that blockchain is a radical change agent. And as we move forward, it will not be 4 or 5 use cases, but every process in the bank will be touched upon by emerging techs in a combination. Last thing which we are working with a few of our fintech players. Fintechs are always cloud first, right? And as a bank, we have our own regulations, how to be a cloud first and so on. And when we are opening our APIs through open banking and the customer eventually utilizing PhonePe, Google Pay through these APIs, what we are seeing the end-to-end cycle, we want to really safeguard with a blockchain kind of a network, so that we should know what customer data fintech is possessing and what is that data at our end. So that end-to-end, whenever any fraud happens, something happens, right? So we should know what has really happened as an audit trail or transparency of the whole data. So funny, in a nutshell, blockchain is a foundational technology. It will touch upon not only banking, but many other sectors. What is needed that people should come together, should have a collaboration mindset, and with a better governance and better guidelines, with some kind of a POC pilots to begin with, learn from them, and go to the enterprise-wide use cases. So that will really help. And I think in India, I think the way last 4 or 5 years we are seeing, every corner, including MeitY or NPCI, various state governments will hear from our sir, Santosh sir, the way Tamil Nadu government is doing or many other state governments are doing. I think it's a very big wave. I think banks are not exception. We are also looking at how can we really improvise the needed, because tomorrow when we will get into the era of 5G or IoTs, right? So customer will look at inherent trust. The trust which we cannot provide immediately on internet, the way farm to fork or the logistics happens. But with the help of blockchain, certainly those tomorrow's customers, so-called IoT devices, or with the 5G, a lot of new business model will come to the picture. Digital currency will bring on more financial product in the banking. So it's going to be a backbone. Blockchain going to be the backbone of the future of banking, not only India but outside of India. So these are my initial remarks for me.
Thank you, Prasanna. Yeah, banking is a key sector for blockchain and one of the very early sectors to start evaluating blockchain. As early as 2015, some banks in the US and Europe they came together to start evaluating blockchain, and that eventually evolved into new blockchain platform at a company called R3 Coda. And in 2017, State Bank of India and DCB Bank also, where Prasanna is leading the innovation. So they formed a consortium named as
Bankchain, yeah. So that was one of the best thing. We could have tried a lot of things on top of that, but those are the good learnings for a better output for the future. Yeah.
Good. Santosh, could you please speak about the relevance of blockchain in the government and how it is being adopted in India and across the world in governments?
Right, sure. So government has a very peculiar position, unlike private sector. So government has multiple interests in blockchain technology, and one, of course, is from users' perspective, because government actually processes huge amount of data, and quite often this data has to be transported from one department or one organization of government to another organization in a trusted, secure way. So, for example, you have exams which which students write in 12th, then their mark sheet and their exam records have to be sent to higher education department for engineering admission, for example. Or health. For example, health records from one hospital may need to be transferred to another hospital when the person moves for jobs or whatever. So from user perspective, if you look, government processes and transfers and shares a lot of data across, and this fundamentally is a technology which is distributed, and anywhere where you need to take a lot of distributed data into distributed entities, this makes perfect sense. So that is one perspective, and I think it helps government improve its own efficiency. Public service delivery efficiencies can be improved if you have trust and auditability built into the blockchain. So it helps. The second perspective is government also has to, like banks, government also has to worry about audit. So every time a transaction happens, most of the government transactions are bordering either on, legal. Most of the documents which we generate and provide are almost legal documents. So whether it is your birth certificate or community certificate, or it is driving license or whatever. So lot of these transactions need to be audited, and lot of this would require a proper record keeping, which cannot be fudged with. And that's another area where auditability is where I think government finds blockchain very, very useful. So that's the second perspective. And there's a third perspective. Government is also, in fact, there is one more. So there are four perspectives. And the third perspective is of encouraging development into this sector as a strategic sector, because this is a new and emerging technology sector which has a potential of transforming a lot of processes, private and public both. And if government becomes a nucleating site for blockchain adoption, it can actually unlock a huge amount of economic value in the present ecosystem, because there are huge amount of inefficiencies. And that's not only about India, that's true more or less about the whole world. So, existing systems will have inefficiencies in them. And if you can build in an innovation, if you can bring in an innovation which can remove those inefficiencies, there is a direct and indirect economic benefit which accrues to the nation. So that's the third perspective which governments have on blockchain. And the fourth perspective is of regulator. Government also has this mandate to actually make sure that the technologies used are safe. They actually bring in positive value to the society, positive net benefit to the society, and they are not misused. So these four perspectives make it very important for governments to dig deep into blockchain, provide policy leadership, regulatory leadership, provide economic leadership, and also to provide leadership in terms of utilizing blockchain's potential in improving its public service delivery.
Thank you, Santosh. It is heartening to see that the governments in India are among the early adopters and evaluators of blockchain in the world. In 2019 or 2018, I think in 2018, TRAI has mandated that to avoid the menace of unsolicited commercial communication (SMS). So TRAI has mandated that the SMS receiving preferences of all the cell phone users in India should be put on blockchain, and all the marketing and promotional SMSs being sent also should be tracked on blockchain. So that's one example. And Tamil Nadu was one of the states in the world to release a very early blockchain policy and the roadmap. And Santosh was one of the key drivers behind that. Andhra Pradesh has implemented land registry on blockchain as early as 2017. In fact, I was involved in that while I was working in my previous employer, Zebi Data. And several states have taken up blockchain across different areas. So in that way, it's very heartening to see that the governments in India, both state and central, are among the early evaluators for blockchain. Next, moving on to supply chain, Abhinav, would you like to speak on the use cases of blockchain in supply chain and what the Chainflux has been working on?
Sure. So primarily, we have been working on within the supply chain area on looking at traceability for the gold industry. So gold, gems and jewelry industry, more focused on the gold industry to ensure sustainable production, to ensure responsible sourcing, and to basically provide something what we are calling a bullion registry. We're working with IIM Ahmedabad, India Gold Policy Center of India, and the National Stock Exchange in creating a nationwide initiative for this that launches very soon. It's still slated to launch end of this month with some of the top refineries, gold refineries in India. Coming to also looking at generic supply chain kind of use cases. So basically, it is looking at traceability across the supply chain. So like Prasanna mentioned, can we look at farm to fork, or can we look at raw material to finished products, and whatever data additions can be maintained across that entire supply chain. So what blockchain can provide is basically something like a connected ERP. So every participant, say if you take a food supply chain, you have from the farm, and then you have you'll have a warehouse, you'll have a processing unit. Or if you take the milk supply chain, you will have the cooperatives, and then you'll have the processing centers. Each participant has a separate kind of data set and separate siloed data. Can you connect all that through an integrated ERP? What that can provide is one is making compliance easy. So if you need to ensure compliance of, say, waste products that comes as a result of the production, there are various EPR certifications, and EPR compliance needs to be looked at or taken care of. That can be made more streamlined using blockchain. You can look at for exports, you can look at proving authenticity and source verification. If I'm purchasing some product, say in Europe, I want to ensure that it is coming from that particular source, that it is. Blockchain again is a data set. It is a database, or kind of distributed database. It can ensure that data is captured at every point in the supply chain by those participants. But if intentionally some participant does not enter the right data into a blockchain system, the blockchain will never be able to figure that out. So one is looking at traceability, which can help prove authenticity, which can potentially prevent counterfeit products. So if you have things like NFC tags or IoT tags integrated with a physical product, blockchain can provide that kind of digital security layer. I think one of the questions was looking at can social policies be implemented? Niti Aayog in their kind of blockchain roadmap paper, I think, which was published in 2019 highlighted, how fertilizer subsidies can be given directly to the farm level. The other use cases around looking at, like Prasanna mentioned, the account aggregator and the Open Credit Enablement Network, or OCEN framework, how account aggregator plus OCEN can make financing for supply chains very easy, where if you have a PO, it can be authenticated by the counterparty, and even potentially financing can be provided based on the counterparty's balance sheet through, and as well as your current balance sheet, because you can look at getting data, accurate data based on your history, based on your transaction history through the account aggregator framework, and use the kind of OCEN model to provide that kind of financing as well. The other use case around supply chain is ensuring ESG compliance or sustainability. So SEBI will be mandating sustainability compliance for reporting for the top companies from 2022-23 financial year onwards. And globally, all companies are looking into how we can go net zero or reduce our carbon emissions to zero by 2030, 2040, 2050. How do you ensure that someone who is green actually is green? If you're, say, measuring their carbon emissions through a sensor, if you're measuring water output through a sensor, can that sensor directly connect to a blockchain system so that you do not have any human intervention, and you can view authentic data on sustainability metrics? So that's another large use case around the supply chain side, in addition to the entire traceability aspects. So I think these are some of the use cases. The e-rupee is another interesting use case. We are looking at trialing that. Basically, if I am, say, I am consuming a slightly higher end food product, and I really like it, and I would like to, say, directly reward the farmer through integration with e-rupee, for example. I provide an e-rupee to scan a QR code, and e-rupee is provided against the phone number of the farmer itself, and they can use it to, say, procure raw materials. So that's another relatively new use case around supply chain and traceability and blockchain. So those are a few use cases that I had in mind and thought might be useful.
Thank you, Abhinav. Yeah, and even across the world, supply chain is one of the major sectors which can be disrupted with blockchain implementation. Walmart and IBM have been collaborating for the traceability. In fact, IBM came up with a product called as Food Trust. So both for counterfeit identification and for track and trace for doing accurate recalls. These are very important. And DBR's a London-based diamond producer. So they started a blockchain called Tracer for identifying counterfeits in diamonds. And even in 2019, luxury brands like Louis Vuitton, Cartier, Prada, they all became a part of a blockchain called Aura blockchain to again track the provenance and for finding out counterfeits of these luxury brand items. Okay, now so we have another 11 minutes including questions, so we'll save 5 minutes for the questions. Prasanna, could you give a 2-minute summary about so what kind of challenges are being faced when in banking sector when blockchain is being explored, and what additional thing do we look forward to from the regulators and the governments for these things to take off?
Yeah, I think it's a tradition, right? Any new technology comes, we always see challenges around that. Okay, I will not look at the blockchain as a challenge because it's one of the technology, right? People can always learn and how we can really implement with the better technocrats, corporate companies, and so on, right? So I have seen how Infosys has raised their blockchain scales, or a TCS or Oracle's or a Wipro since 2015 without any blockchain practices, how they have really started their work. And here we have seen, we can see the examples of TechMs and also from a tech service provider side, we don't have any challenges, right? Even on the regulator side, we have seen how RBI is with the help of NIBM. We keep on doing a lot of programs for bankers, right? Since last 3-4 years, we have trained almost all banks on blockchain and the various other concepts like DeFi, CBDCs, and so on. So on awareness also, it's not a much challenge around, right? The challenge which I see is a people mindset and a governance structure, and how do we really identify priority use cases. We can identify 2021 use cases, but which are the priority use case wherein we can really invest some time and see which is the output for as a banking industry, so-called Santosh sir was talking about the economy, right? So I think that's the one challenge, but that challenge also getting reduced with RBI Innovation Hub, which is a company which is formed by RBI last year, and we will see under guidance of Bansal sir and others, we'll see certain use cases on CBDC, cross-border, or we'll see how various disconnected experience will get amalgam. The challenge is, the biggest challenge is that awareness within organization so far. So there are hardly, I can name 10 to 15 banks who know what is by blockchain. Who knows what is by blockchain means? Their top management knows this blockchain is their agenda. But a majority banks, they may not have a blockchain as an agenda because it may not provide the right use case or right business case that moment, maybe in 2021. But when we have to look at as an industry, we need to embark on various technologies like AI or blockchain, so that our life in banking becomes very easy in the future. So that was a challenge in 17-18, but today banks are coming together. We have seen infrastructure blockchain company, right? Example, or how RBI is providing their insights into their bulletins every month and how they are adopting. We had some of the cohorts on RBI, like third is around SME, second was on cross-border, where most of the companies were part of blockchain technologies. I think biggest problem or biggest thing is like, how do I convince at my MD level or a top management level, this should be our agenda. So that in a nutshell, when we look at some consortium use cases, it becomes very easy adoption. So at our bank, what we had done, we had started with the first phase, creating the awareness on our board members and the top management. So today everybody is aware what is blockchain, what are different use cases. That's not a problem. Another problem which every organization can see, how do we sign off that blockchain use case, right? I can develop with the help of a partner, I will develop with the help of my internal team, but how do I test it? How do I do the UAT? How do I do security testing? How do I do audit? So I think there is no straightforward framework for validating blockchains as of now. But I think that's a gradual process. At a DCB, we have done 3 use cases, smaller use cases. Through these smaller use cases, we touched upon all the SDLCs till deployment. How can we really surpass for a better, bigger use cases, how we can be ready? So appeal to all the organization banks, do some POCs, pilots, smaller use cases, so that your complete SDLC cycle is aware of every step, so that when we lift up some bigger use case like how telecoms have done, or how we are looking at a video KYC as one use case, or trade finance as another use case. So it will be very easy to really adopt. So I think last but not least, biggest challenge which I see in adoption of a blockchain is the availability of skill set and the superficial circle around those skill set, right? So what is skill set for a blockchain? So some of the fundamental cryptography and programming languages should be awareness, and the smart contract awareness, and some of those consensus mechanism awareness, right? And it's a matter of 15-20 days, the way you used to study during engineering, right? We used to surpass 10-15 days any of those subjects. Similarly, we should look at how a blockchain or how Ethereum or any other hyperledgers can be taken care of with the help of an existing internal development pool. I really don't have to go back and run around those blockchain developers who keep on asking lakhs of salaries, right? So that's another challenge. We have to break that shackle, right? So that we should really see blockchain as a normal technology in next 3 years, not as a emerging technology. So I think if we really worked upon creating better blockchain programs or training programs at a college level itself, so that it's a normal technology, just like we have seen Java wave in 2000, right? Everybody was after Java and creating or working on the Java. So similar way, education, having right skill sets within organization, buying awareness, the complete cycle, we should know awareness, use case repositories at bank level, right? And which are the top priority use cases as a banking community we should lift. And the other challenges are not challenges now, because regulator, bankers are really looking at how we should collaborate together and work forward for right use cases. So within banks, say example, we have done one use case on a gold loan, right? So what happens in a gold loan? Somebody comes at a branch and says, "This is my ornament," right? So we take all of his photograph and ornament photograph, so that whenever he comes back, we can share a authentic mechanism on his phone, which is a consent, right? Once he says yes, then we compare his photograph and those ornaments which during the ornament which we have taken, the vault, the complete whole cycle we are keeping under blockchain. So likewise, we have to really identify which are those gaps in the current banking processes where we should improvise operations. It shouldn't be that we are investing so much on blockchain without having a right business case, use case, or without having a right ROI, right? So that is another thing which I look at it. So now coming back, another challenge we look at a platform level. If I want to build some NFT use case, these days we talk a lot about NFTs, DeFi's, and some of the ethical cryptocurrency use cases, right? The riding architecture or deployment, it becomes so easy that when you have a free Azure or those things available and some of the Ethereum benefits available in initial days. But eventually, when we land up that use case for 2 to 3 years, we may feel that blockchain is too much complex, right, to manage and to the overhead. So use case could be simple to deploy development, but the managing with the help of the current Ethereum challenges or current the way we develop, right? So there also we have seen the companies like Polygon or companies who are building second level or second layer of rapid application development. So challenges are there, but the whole ecosystem, the way it is progressing compared to the we have seen progress of internet last 20-25 years, the pace is too much in everywhere in a blockchain adoption. So these are some of the remarks, Fanny, from my side.
Thanks, Prasanna. So we are getting out of time. We'll take some questions.
Yeah.
So a question from the audience is: so blockchain will will blockchain take the control of currency away from the government? And so how does it impact the nation's abilities, and what should be done to strike the right balance? Santosh, do you want to comment on that?
Sure. So blockchains are not going to take over the currencies. I mean, there is a bit of a threat from the cryptocurrencies, and if it is unregulated, for sure they can create a disruption. But I think most of the countries in the world are aware of it, and I think, in my opinion and my experience, I don't think they pose really a great challenge. I think governments are capable enough to handle that. The bigger question is actually whether so in fact, that becomes the problem of blockchain. And you were talking about challenges, and Prasanna rightly outlined some of the key challenges which all of us are facing, with whether it is in private sector or is in public sector. The challenges remain the same. So it's the association of blockchain, very, very strong association of blockchain with cryptocurrencies is what is the problem actually for its adoption. So what is a strong it's a very interesting thing. So something which is a strength of blockchain, which is, I mean, people get fascinated by blockchain because of cryptocurrencies. At the same time, the governments look at it with great suspicion because of its strong association with cryptocurrencies. So in fact, last month I was there to train the senior policymakers from all over the country, some very, very senior people. And I was very happy to see amount of curiosity they had on blockchain. So in fact, they said that please ignore all the other part of your lecture. Just let us know about blockchain and only blockchain. So which was good. So I think slowly these things are changing.
Yes.
Good. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Funny, in my view, government, I think there will not be any threat in the government. Like government is the biggest institution in any country, right? And they drive everything. Okay, so if you say bank will vanish, it means that as good as a government will vanish, which will never gonna happen. With the centralized bank digital currency, it's a initiative by many governments or many central banks, where to see how do we replace or have some kind of a complement to your paper currency. We know the pitfalls of the paper currency, corruptions. We can't track, we can't trace. Huge amount of goes to print those currencies, managing that, right? The whole economy has seen the 96% of currency we have revamped, demonetization. So I think CBDCs will come and will have their own advantages, but there is a layered architecture, reviewing the monetary policies, what kind of architecture we should have, centralized, decentralization, what type of account or access we have, whether it is a tokenized account, and finally, what use cases we are building on a CBDC. Is it a retail or an institution like cross-border? So country like India, which sits on so many railroads like UPIs, Aadhaar, and it becomes very easy to implement world-class CBDC for India with the right use cases to begin with. So I think CBDC is for enhancing our life, financial life, not for replacing some other thing. Yeah.
Great. I think we are out of time. I thank the esteemed panelists for sharing their valuable insights in this area, and once again I thank the organizers for giving us an opportunity to share our thoughts. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you everyone.